Before dawn in 479 BC, the Greek allied army waited near the northern slopes of Mount Cithaeron. Below them stretched the plain of Plataea, ground better suited to the cavalry of Mardonius. Persian horsemen had already threatened the springs, supply roads, and foraging parties on which the Greeks depended. The coalition included troops from many independent cities, each with its own commanders, traditions, and interests. Overall command belonged to Pausanias of Sparta, but no one could be certain that the alliance would remain united once the battle began. Only 1 year earlier, King Leonidas and the final defenders at Thermopylae had been overwhelmed. Their stand became a symbol, but it had not stopped the invasion. Now Sparta had to transform memory and sacrifice into an actual military victory. Under pressure from Persian cavalry and shortages of water, the Greek commanders decided to move during the night toward a more secure position. The maneuver quickly became confused. Some contingents withdrew farther than intended. Others failed to receive clear instructions. The Spartan and Tegean formations remained separated from much of the center, while the Athenians held another sector. By sunrise, the Allied line was divided and dangerously exposed. Mardonius saw movement across the Greek positions and concluded that his opponents were retreating because their courage had failed. He ordered an attack before Pausanias could rebuild the line. Persian troops advanced toward the Spartans and Tegeans, while other forces engaged the Athenians elsewhere. Yet the Spartans did not immediately counterattack. According to Herodotus, Pausanias waited for favorable signs from the sacrifices performed before battle. Persian archers continued shooting as the Greeks held their ground. Arrows struck shields and armor, and casualties increased. Under growing pressure, Pausanias looked toward the sanctuary of Hera at Plataea and prayed that the Greeks would not lose their hope. The Tegeans moved first. Then the sacrificial signs were declared favorable, and the Spartans advanced. Two military systems now collided at close range. Persian soldiers fought fiercely, pressing against the Greek line and trying to seize or break their spears. Mardonius remained near his selected troops at the center of the struggle. But the large shields, longer thrusting spears, heavier protection, and close formation of the hoplites gave the Spartans and Tegeans an advantage once the fighting became a direct contest of ordered infantry. This was no longer a desperate defense inside a narrow pass. It was a battle that would determine whether the Persian invasion could continue. Its outcome would decide the future of the invasion and the balance of power among the Greek states. How had Sparta gone from missing Marathon and losing a king at Thermopylae to commanding the coalition that now faced Mardonius at Plataea? Sparta is often remembered as a city where every man was a warrior and every part of life existed for war. The reality was more complicated. Spartan society contained several groups with different rights and responsibilities. Full male citizens, commonly called Spartiates, formed only a small part of the population. Around them lived the Perioikoi, free communities without full Spartan citizenship, and the helots, an unfree agricultural population whose labor supported the state. Spartan women also managed households and property, while men fulfilled military duties. This structure explains why Sparta valued military strength so highly. The state controlled territory in Laconia and Messenia, but the citizen population was limited. Helots greatly outnumbered the Spartiates and remained a constant source of anxiety. Rebellion, loss of farmland, foreign intervention, or declining citizen numbers could threaten the entire social order. The Spartan army therefore served two purposes. It fought external enemies, but it also protected the system that allowed the citizen class to devote itself to war. Even so, Sparta could not fight every campaign using citizens alone. Much of its power came from the Peloponnesian League, a network of allied states that accepted Spartan leadership in major land wars. These allies supplied hoplites, light troops, provisions, and local knowledge. They also helped secure the Peloponnese, while Spartan forces operated elsewhere. The alliance was not a centralized state with a permanent national army. Each member decided how many troops to send, supplied them through its own institutions, and guarded its political independence. Spartan leadership depended on negotiation and reputation as much as command on the battlefield in practice. For this reason, the phrase Spartan Army can be misleading. It might refer to full Spartan citizens, perioikoi serving as hoplites, helots supporting the army, or allied contingents commanded by Spartan leaders. Sparta's reputation rested on its citizen warriors, but its military influence depended on a much broader coalition. The limits of Spartan power became clear in 490 BC. When Persian forces landed near Marathon, Athens requested immediate assistance. According to Herodotus, the Spartans agreed to help, but delayed their departure because of religious rules connected to the lunar calendar. By the time they reached Attica, the battle had already ended. Marathon showed that Sparta did not always react quickly, and that religious obligations could directly shape military decisions. It also proved that Athens could defeat a Persian force without Spartan participation. Military prestige did not guarantee that Sparta would lead every important action in Greece. 10 years later, the danger was far greater. King Xerxes prepared a massive invasion that combined land forces, a powerful fleet, bridges across the Hellespont, supply depots, and troops drawn from many regions of the Achaemenid Empire. Persian diplomacy also encouraged Greek communities to submit rather than resist. The states that chose resistance had to create a coalition on a scale rarely seen in the Greek world. Athens possessed the strongest navy and believed that survival depended on controlling the sea. Sparta held the greatest reputation for heavy infantry and was expected to lead the defense on land. This division created cooperation, but it also created tension. Athens feared the destruction of cities outside the Peloponnese. Sparta and its allies often preferred defensible positions closer to their own territory. Every strategic decision raised the same questions. Where should the Greeks stand? Which cities would be exposed? And who would command? Sparta entered the war not with limitless numbers, but with discipline, prestige, allies, and a social system built around military readiness. To understand why other Greek states accepted Spartan leadership at Thermopylae, we must look inside the army itself. The Spartan army was built from more than weapons and battlefield courage. Its foundations began in the social institutions that shaped citizen life from childhood. Boys born into the citizen class entered a state-directed system of education and training, commonly called the Agoge. The program emphasized obedience, physical conditioning, endurance, competition, group discipline, and service to the community. From youth, each participant learned that courage mattered only when it strengthened the discipline and survival of the group. Popular stories often describe the Agoge as a brutal sequence of punishments designed to create superhuman warriors. That image is misleading. Hardship was important, but the broader purpose was to produce citizens who accepted collective rules, placed the needs of Sparta above private comfort, and could serve effectively in a hoplite formation. The system trained behavior as much as strength. Discipline continued into adulthood through the syssitia, the common dining groups of Spartan citizens. Members ate together, contributed food, and maintained close social bonds. These meals reinforced loyalty, accountability, and shared identity. A citizen who failed to provide his required contribution risked losing status. Military cohesion was therefore supported by everyday social pressure long before an army marched into battle. When Spartiate citizens entered combat, they fought as hoplites. Their equipment was broadly similar to that used by other heavy infantry across Greece: a large round shield, a thrusting spear, a short sword, a helmet, and varying forms of body armor. Some might also wear protection for the legs or arms depending on period, wealth, and availability. Spartan strength did not come from a secret weapon. Their reputation rested on their ability to keep formation, obey commands, advance in order, and remain steady under pressure. Their appearance should not be confused with modern cinematic images of nearly naked warriors. A real hoplite depended on shield, spear, armor, and the soldiers beside him. The central battlefield formation was the phalanx. Hoplites stood in close ranks, with each shield helping protect the man to the left. Spears projected forward, while rear ranks added depth, pressure, and replacements for men who fell or became exhausted. The formation worked because individuals accepted that survival depended on maintaining the line. A phalanx was difficult to break from the front when it remained organized. It was especially effective on relatively open ground or in narrow spaces where an opponent could not easily move around it. Yet the same formation had weaknesses. It turned slowly, struggled on broken terrain, and could become vulnerable if attacked from the flank. Its effectiveness depended on cohesion across the entire unit. Spartan command helped preserve that cohesion. Sparta had two kings, but both did not always lead the same expedition. Below the king were officers such as polemarchs, lochagoi, messengers, and commanders responsible for smaller formations. Orders had to pass through several levels while the line continued moving. Music also played a practical role. Flute players accompanied the advance, not merely for ceremony. Their rhythm helped the ranks keep the same pace as they approached the enemy. A steady march reduced the danger that eager men would move too quickly, slower men would fall behind, or the shield wall would open before contact. The army, however, was never composed only of full Spartan citizens. The perioikoi were free inhabitants of surrounding communities who lacked the complete political rights of the Spartiates. They worked in trade, craft production, and local administration, helping provide weapons, tools, and supplies. Perioikoi also served in military campaigns and could fight as hoplites. Their contribution became increasingly important because the number of full Spartan citizens was limited. At Plataea, the forces associated with Sparta included a substantial body of perioikoi, demonstrating that the army depended on more than the famous citizen elite. Helots also accompanied Spartan forces. They are most often remembered as an unfree agricultural population whose labor supported the citizen system, but in war they performed essential tasks. They carried equipment, prepared food, erected camps, gathered supplies, assisted the wounded, and helped move material across difficult ground. Some helots could also support fighting directly, although they should not all be imagined as trained or equipped like hoplites. Herodotus describes large numbers of helots accompanying the Spartan contingent at Plataea. Their presence reveals how much logistical labor stood behind the armored men in the front ranks. The true Spartan army was therefore a military and social system. Citizen training produced discipline. Common dining created group loyalty. Officers preserved order. Hoplites formed the heavy infantry line. Perioikoi expanded the fighting force, while helots sustained it through labor and support. Sparta possessed no completely superior weapon. Its advantage came from organization, reputation, command, and the ability to hold formation under pressure. Yet even those strengths depended on perioikoi, helots, and allied Greeks. The legendary Spartan line was never standing alone. In 480 BC, the Greek coalition chose Thermopylae as the place to slow the invasion of Xerxes. At that time, the pass lay between steep mountains and the coastal waters of the Malian Gulf. The narrow ground limited how many Persian troops could fight at once, reduced the usefulness of cavalry, and protected the road into central Greece. The position also depended on the Greek fleet operating near Artemisium. Land and sea defenses supported each other. If Persian ships moved around the coast, the army at Thermopylae could be bypassed. If the pass fell, the fleet would risk losing its secure position. The strategy therefore required cooperation between Spartan leadership on land and Athenian naval power at sea. King Leonidas did not bring the entire Spartan army. According to Herodotus, the festival of the Carneia was taking place, while other Greek communities were also limited by religious obligations and incomplete mobilization. Leonidas led 300 selected Spartans as part of an advance force intended to hold the pass until larger reinforcements could arrive. The mission should not be described as a plan from the beginning to send 300 men to certain death. Herodotus suggests the Spartans expected the main army to follow. The crisis developed faster than the coalition had anticipated. Leonidas also commanded far more than 300 soldiers. The initial defense included several thousand Greeks from Tegea, Mantinea, Corinth, Mycenae, Thespiae, Thebes, Phocis, Locris, and other Arcadian communities. The famous Spartans formed the leading contingent, but Thermopylae was an allied operation. When Persian forces approached, Xerxes initially waited, perhaps expecting the smaller Greek army to withdraw. When it remained, he ordered attacks into the pass. The narrow space prevented his army from deploying its full numbers. Greek hoplites stood in close formation, using large shields and thrusting spears to control the front. The Greeks could rotate units through the line, allowing tired men to rest while fresh contingents took their place. Persian infantry attacked repeatedly, and archers maintained pressure, but the terrain favored the heavier Greek formation. Cavalry could not maneuver freely, while troops moving through the confined approach had limited room to surround the defenders. Herodotus reports that even the elite force known to Greek writers as the Immortals failed to achieve an immediate breakthrough. This should not be interpreted as proof that Persian soldiers lacked courage or discipline. They were attacking a prepared position through ground designed to reduce their advantages in numbers, mobility, and combined arms. The defenders also used controlled movement. Some Greek units reportedly withdrew a short distance before turning back against troops who had followed too quickly. Such actions required discipline because a false retreat could easily become a real collapse. The ability to maintain order was one reason Spartan leadership carried such prestige within the coalition. The strategic situation changed when a local man named Ephialtes revealed a mountain path that passed behind the Greek position. Xerxes sent troops along the route. Phocian soldiers guarded the path, but they were surprised and failed to stop the Persian movement toward the rear of Thermopylae. When Leonidas learned that encirclement was approaching, most of the Greek contingents withdrew. The reasons for the decision remain debated. Leonidas may have ordered them away to preserve the alliance, or some units may have chosen to leave after learning the position could no longer be held. The 300 Spartans remained. Around 700 Thespians also stayed and continued fighting, while a Theban contingent remained under circumstances that ancient and modern historians interpret differently. Helots and other attendants were probably present as well, although the surviving sources do not provide a complete picture of their role in the final phase. Why Leonidas stayed cannot be reduced to one certain explanation. He may have intended to protect the retreat, delay the Persian advance, obey Spartan expectations, prevent an organized withdrawal from turning into panic, or fulfill an oracle that connected Sparta's survival with the death of one of its kings. The final battle was fought against pressure from the front and rear. Leonidas was killed, and the remaining defenders fought around his body before being overwhelmed. Thermopylae was therefore a military defeat. Xerxes gained the pass, advanced into central Greece, and later occupied Athens. Yet the battle became a powerful political symbol. It demonstrated that resistance continued, gave the alliance a story of shared sacrifice, and strengthened the commitment of states still preparing to fight. Thermopylae did not defeat Xerxes. Leonidas did not save Greece alone. The campaign survived because the fleet continued resisting, and because a much larger allied army would later assemble. The legend began with 300 Spartans, but the real defense depended on thousands of Greeks standing together. Their stand delayed the invasion, but could not decide the war that continued beyond Thermopylae. After Thermopylae fell in 480 BC, the Persian advance moved into central Greece. Thespiae and Plataea were destroyed, Athens was evacuated, and the city was later occupied and burned. The Greek coalition now faced a strategic crisis. Some leaders wanted to continue defending territory north of the Peloponnese. Others argued that the safest course was to withdraw behind the Isthmus of Corinth and protect the southern peninsula. For Sparta and many of its Peloponnesian allies, the isthmus offered a narrow position that could be fortified and defended by heavy infantry. Walls could be built across the approach, supplies could remain closer to friendly territory, and the largest Spartan interest would lie behind the line. But this strategy placed Athens and other communities outside the Peloponnese in extreme danger. Athens depended on its fleet and had already abandoned its city. A strategy focused only on the isthmus could leave the Athenians without homes, land, or confidence that their allies intended to protect them. If the coalition broke apart, Athens might seek separate terms from Persia. Xerxes could then gain access to Athenian ships, ports, and experienced crews, leaving Sparta to face a stronger enemy closer to its own territory. The naval battle of Salamis changed the direction of the war. In the confined straits, the allied Greek fleet defeated the larger Persian fleet and disrupted Xerxes' ability to support the entire invasion by sea. The victory did not immediately destroy Persian power, but it made the continued campaign more difficult. Xerxes withdrew much of his army toward Asia, while Mardonius remained in Greece with a selected force. Persian troops still controlled important regions in the north and center. The invasion was not over. Its success now depended on Mardonius defeating the remaining coalition on land. Mardonius attempted to divide his opponents through diplomacy. He offered favorable terms to Athens, including restoration and a respected position under Persian authority. Athens refused, but its leaders continued pressing Sparta to send a major army north. They understood that naval success alone could not remove Mardonius from central Greece. Sparta hesitated. Its leaders feared exposing the Peloponnese, continued strengthening defenses at the isthmus, and remained uncertain about fighting Persian cavalry on open ground. The delay increased tension inside the alliance. If Athens believed that Sparta would never move, its commitment to resistance could weaken. Eventually, the political and strategic danger forced Sparta to act. Leonidas was dead, and his son was still too young to rule. Command was given to Pausanias, Leonidas' nephew and regent for the young king. Pausanias did not lead only Spartans. His army included Spartiates, Perioikoi, Helots, Athenians, Tegeans, Corinthians, Megarians, Plataeans, and troops from many other Greek states. Organizing them required diplomacy as well as military authority. Every city had its own commanders, traditions, rivalries, and preferred place in the battle line. At Plataea, Sparta would no longer command a small advance force in a narrow pass. Pausanias now led one of the largest Greek armies ever assembled, but numbers alone could not guarantee victory. He had to hold the coalition together, while Mardonius used cavalry, archery, disrupted water supplies, and pressure on the roads to break it apart. The next battle would test whether Spartan discipline could transform a divided alliance into a force capable of ending the invasion. In 479 BC, the armies of Mardonius and the Greek alliance faced each other near Plataea in Boeotia. Mardonius preferred the broad plain, where Persian cavalry could maneuver, archers could operate freely, and local allies could support the army. Behind him stood a fortified camp. Pausanias kept the Greeks closer to the lower slopes of Mount Cithaeron, where broken ground reduced the danger of cavalry attacks. The battle did not begin with one immediate charge. It developed as a contest over position, water, roads, and supplies. Persian cavalry repeatedly attacked Greek foraging parties, threatened the mountain passes, and harassed isolated units. The coalition depended on routes through Cithaeron for food and reinforcements, while springs near the Greek positions became increasingly difficult to use. Pausanias eventually decided to move the army during the night toward ground, with better access to water and stronger defensive possibilities. The order was reasonable, but its execution failed. In darkness, several contingents moved farther than intended. Others stopped near Plataea. The Spartans and Tegeans remained behind, while the Athenians occupied a separate sector. One Spartan officer was remembered as refusing to retreat because he considered withdrawal dishonorable. By dawn, the Greek army was scattered. Mardonius saw the movement and believed that the alliance had lost courage. He ordered his troops forward before the Greeks could rebuild their line. Persian forces advanced against the Spartans and Tegeans, while troops allied with Persia engaged the Athenians elsewhere. The Persian infantry established a barrier of shields and sent repeated volleys of arrows toward the Greek position. The Spartans and Tegeans had to endure the attack, while Pausanias waited for favorable signs from the sacrifices. Arrows struck shields, armor, and exposed ground. Losses increased, and the delay became harder to sustain. According to Herodotus, Pausanias prayed toward the sanctuary of Hera at Plataea. The Tegeans then began moving forward, and soon the sacrificial signs were judged favorable. The Spartan line advanced with them. At close range, Persian soldiers fought with determination. Herodotus describes them seizing Greek spears, trying to break the shafts, and resisting fiercely around the position of Mardonius. They were not an undisciplined crowd. They were experienced troops fighting under a commander who understood that the campaign depended on victory. Yet the conditions of the struggle favored the Greek hoplites. Spartan and Tegean infantry carried larger shields, heavier protection, and long thrusting spears suited to fighting in close formation. Their ranks were trained to maintain pressure together. Once the shield barrier was crossed and the fighting became a direct contest between dense infantry formations, the Persian center faced a serious disadvantage. Mardonius remained near his selected troops and continued directing the battle. His presence helped hold the line, but it also concentrated command around one visible point. When Mardonius was killed, the effect was immediate. The troops nearest him lost their commander, confidence weakened, and the central formation began to withdraw toward the fortified camp. The collapse did not occur everywhere at once. On another part of the battlefield, the Athenians fought Theban troops who had supported Persia. Other allied contingents moved to assist, pursue, and close the remaining routes. Plataea was therefore not a victory achieved by Sparta alone. The Persian survivors retreated behind the wooden defenses of their camp. The Greeks initially struggled to break through the fortifications. The Spartans were experienced in heavy infantry battle, but the Athenians and other allies also played an important role in overcoming the defenses. Once the wall was breached, organized resistance inside the camp collapsed. Not every Persian force was destroyed. Artabazus had already withdrawn with a substantial body of troops and eventually led them away from Greece. Even so, the defeat of Mardonius ended the main land threat created by Xerxes' invasion. Plataea demonstrated both the strength and the limitations of Spartan power. Pausanias held overall command, and the Spartan and Tegean line absorbed the central attack before advancing against Mardonius. Their discipline, armor, and cohesion proved decisive in the most important infantry struggle. But the victory depended on the entire coalition. Athens had rejected Persian diplomacy, fought at sea, and held another sector at Plataea. Tegea advanced beside Sparta. Corinth, Megara, Plataea, and many other communities supplied troops. Perioikoi and helots expanded and sustained the Spartan contingent. The victory did not mean Sparta had conquered Persia or gained permanent control of Greece. It meant the invasion had failed on land, while the coalition survived long enough to turn defense into a wider offensive across the Aegean world. Thermopylae created the legend of refusal and sacrifice. Plataea produced the military result that Thermopylae could not. The invading land army was defeated, and the strategic initiative passed to the Greeks. Sparta became famous because Leonidas stayed. It became victorious because Pausanias commanded an alliance that did not fight alone.